And just like that, ladies and gentlemen around the world, it is The Daily Show. Here on Men's Radio Station, it's Wednesday. It is the 25th of January. How the hell have we nearly got to the end of January? God only knows. No idea. Soon it'll be February, and then it'll be all that crap with Valentine's Day. Then it'll be Easter, and the Easter crap is already in the supermarkets. It was there just after Christmas. It's a wonder they haven't got Halloween and Christmas 2023 up in the shops. But there we are. We live in a commercial world, do we not? You know him. You've grown to love him, ladies and gentlemen. You've taken him to the bosom of your heart. You've taken him into your home. He's become part of your family. He's your pal. He is Neil Long.
Your introductions get ever so slightly more creepy every time, I have to say.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
I can see
he's hanging around. Tomorrow I'm going to, on Friday, on a Monday, by the way, I'm going to add, he's hanging around your children and grandchildren's school.
No, please don't. Please don't.
I'm just saying that, you know,
no,
if you're going to...
Please don't add that. I can see our guest in the green room absolutely grimacing, and I don't blame her.
I don't care. I don't care.
Do you know the big news of the day?
I want the big news of the day. What is the big news of the day?
The world's ugliest sheep got kidnapped. It's a sheep with one eye, and it looks like its face is in a permanent grimace, and it got kidnapped from a field in Northamptonshire.
Is there? Please tell me there's a punchline to this.
There isn't one.
Jesus Christ. There's nothing. There's just, that's it. The world's ugliest sheep got kidnapped.
That is it. The world's ugliest sheep's been kidnapped. So somebody somewhere...
Is this a sort of romantic plea for help? It's like...
It's not a romantic plea for help. Just return the damn thing.
I'm local. I'm available. My name's Neil. I do comedy. I do radio. Give it a shot. What's the worst that can happen?
I'm not like a sheep surrogate or anything.
Well, you say that, but have you ever walked past mint sauce and not felt slightly uneasy?
No, never.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Have you ever walked past mint jelly and just thought, that could be me?
I walked past mint jelly and thought, yeah, not so much.
I hate mint sauce. I hate mint sauce and I hate mint jelly. Let's go to Houston in Texas. Good morning, everyone. Happy to report I survived yesterday's tornado. And now she's got to face the Wizard of Oz. She's got to face the Wizard of Oz. Hang on. Oh, listen, he loves mint sauce. Sorry, this isn't Radio BBC Norwich. I don't care. There we go. Let's go to the Flash, Barry J. Allen. Good afternoon, all. Hi there, Barry. Hope life is improving for you. Look, she's in the digital green room. Well, frankly, with the budget that we've got, which is zero, she is working her way through the digital fresh coffee, the digital fresh orange juice, the digital fresh mini Danish. She's your pal.
Yep.
I take no responsibility.
And
Helen Snape.
It's her second time back on the show. Hello, Helen Snape. How are you?
Hello, Neil Long. Hello, Russ. Yeah.
Hello, Snape good. Helen. It's all good stuff. All good. How are you?
Yeah. Well, I'm well. I've done something to my foot, but other than that,
is this boring or is this interesting to everybody else? To be honest with you,
I have no idea.
I'm in that kind of mood. Not my foot.
Yeah.
Helen, go on, share. Go on.
What have you done to your foot, Helen? Share with group.
Go on. What have you done to your foot?
It hurts when I walk, Neil.
Well, don't bloody walk. Get a sedan chair.
But you won't have to walk anywhere for the next hour. Because you're talking
hour?
And maybe that time, and maybe in that time, we'll have covered such profound healing topics. It will have spread through every cell in your body, and your foot will...
Yeah.
Maybe. Now, Helen Snape, I have a question for you, and welcome back to The Daily Show with me and Neil. Is this laying ghosts? I don't mean having sex with the paranormal. I mean laying the ghosts of the past. Is that something you encompass with your magnificent brain, or is it not really your wheelhouse? No, clearly not. Okay, I would talk about it with
easy questions, Russ. Why don't you? I mean, ease the guest in gently.
I do believe in making peace with the past.
Thank you. There you go. See, that's it. You, Mr. Negative, Helen Snape, Mrs. Positive.
Helen Snape is a relationship coach and a reformed people pleaser.
Your reading is getting good.
HelenSnape.com. And she's a fascinating lady. Talking about you,
we'll be the judge of that, Neil.
I first met her a few years ago on my travels, and a reformed people pleaser just kind of jumped out at me.
Yeah.
So I couldn't resist talking to her about it. And then she came to visit me at Radio Jackie and did another impromptu interview. And then I thought, I've really got to get
So
her.
I'm really getting the crumbs from your digital table. This is
Not
what
at
you're
all.
saying. This is
I
what you're
bring you
saying.
the- I
This is
bring
what
you
you're
the
saying
best.
to me.
No, it isn't. I bring you the best. You got the
Shit.
best sitting in front of you, and you're too busy dissing me.
Well, it's a national sport, Neil. It's not my fault.
What, dissing me?
Of course.
Well, I'm glad, because today is all about boundaries. So maybe we start with how to put a boundary in with obstreperous co-presenters. But it is all about boundaries, right?
It
is.
All right.
What
Off
I would
you
like,
go, Hells. Come on.
if possible, is just so for benefit of people who haven't seen you before, just in 1 minute, how you got from where you are and you thought, I'm not staying in this place anymore because I've had enough, to where you are now with this incredible body of work in the world, your own clients, teaching and sharing, putting this important message out to the world. Just give us a quick bit of your journey while Russ flashes the promotional material.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, I burnt out from work because I couldn't say no. Like I just overworked, and I got.
What were you doing, if you don't mind me asking?
Working in human resources.
Okay.
So it's a full-on job, but I
being
overworked.
A resource to everyone apart from yourself, it would seem.
Pretty much.
Good.
And it was just
good,
because,
Neil.
I just kept saying yes to everything, and I didn't take the breaks, and I just kept going and thought I could do that forever. And it turns out that no, you can't, and your body will begin to say no for you.
What were the initial symptoms that let's deal with the physical side of it first. What were the things that you were noticing when your body was saying, for God's sake, stop?
Honestly, it took a huge amount for me to even notice what my body was saying, because I was so used to ignoring it. It started off with me noticing that my arms were so painful I couldn't get to sleep, like resting on my arms at night. And that was kind of my first signal, really. Like I wasn't really noticing the fact that actually my whole body was really tense.
So, Helen, was that just like tension, but it was manifesting itself in your arms? Is that what you're saying?
I think it was a combination of stress, but also I was literally just typing so much and not taking breaks. Right. So it was the beginnings of repetitive strain injury, and I probably also had really poor posture, which of course just contributes to it. Yeah. And that's what I developed, was really bad repetitive strain injury in my hands and my wrists and my arms and my shoulders, until it got to the point where I literally couldn't type anymore.
Wow.
Because you believed you couldn't say no for whatever reason, and that spread to every part of your life, didn't it? Until it took a burnout and maybe anything else you'd tell us about to make you realize, no, there's got to be a better way, and therein began your journey, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, that was at work, but yeah, you're right, it was affecting me in my personal life as well. I think we've talked before about the fact that I was in an abusive marriage, and some of that was about me being like the real giver and wanting to say yes all the time and trying to make my husband happy, and he was the complete opposite of the real taker. And yet I participated in that because I thought that it was my job.
You felt you had to. I mean, you used the term narcissistic before, didn't you?
Yeah. And
if someone's like that, there's nothing you can do to please them. They will look for fault.
The perfect storm, Helen, didn't you? You're having a horrible time at work, and then you go home, and then you've got a not pleasant. I'm going to walk around that because it's a minefield. I don't want any problems, and you got no respite. And I always said that if you can run away from work or leave work and you come into a lovely domestic environment, that's great. You can recharge. Or if you've got a rubbish domestic environment and you enjoy your work, but when they're both bad, it is unrelenting misery. And that's what it is, isn't it?
And now you have both. You're now in a really great relationship, aren't you?
Yeah.
With a chap with the best name in the world. What's his name?
His name happens to be Neil.
Okay, it's not me, by the way, but he spells it the proper way, Neil, not like the heathens do. So obviously things are really.
You're in a relationship with Neil Long?
No.
No.
With somebody else.
I wanted to see if I could just make that run. I wanted to see if I could just make that run.
Stop your stirring, Russ. Helen and I are friends. We are good friends and associates, but we're
that's
not.
How it starts. Helen, that's how it starts. You start off as friends,
there's
and
nothing
next thing
that's got started because she's already with someone else called Neil who spells it the proper way, unlike
then
the
she
heathens
wouldn't have any problems at critical moments shouting out the word Neil. It's taken a huge pressure off her.
Yeah, well, every cloud has a silver lining.
Precisely.
But can we please
Anyway, right, let's get back to people pleasing. What were the other physical manifest? I know this is digging deep, and please tell me to bugger off if you don't want to answer these questions. Absolutely fine. But I think people watching and listening all over the world, in Texas and New York and northeastern United States and all that, and Scotland and everywhere else. Is there something that happened to you that you could say, look out for these, I'm going to call them symptoms. They're not, but call them symptoms for convenience.
Yeah. I mean, it was things like, realizing that I'd agreed to do something and then regretting it straight after, and thinking to myself, like, how on earth have I just agreed to do that?
Why the hell did I say yes?
Yeah.
Why did I say yes?
We're getting response to this already. This is clearly an important topic for people, which is why we wanted you back. And what I'd really love to do is use the time we've got together for you to give us as many examples as you can of the things you used to do but don't do anymore, because you would have had to learn new strategies. Did you work with a therapist first of all to get to the root of it and do all that?
I've worked with so many people. Like it's a real combination, but I mean, other signs were things like that I felt that I was responsible for making my husband happy. I thought that was my responsibility.
You thought that was your duty and your job, and that what you had to do. Did it occur to you, a serious question, as most of our questions are, that it was also his responsibility as your other half to make you happy?
I think I did feel that, but I think I was so focused on him. I thought it was selfish to think about me.
You see, that's so telling, isn't it?
And that thinking is exactly what needs flipping on its head, because I think, first of all, we're all responsible for making ourselves happy.
Indeed.
And from a happy place with two happy people, that's how happy relationships happen. People that go into relationships to try and have a relationship to be happy. If they're not happy first, generally the relationship doesn't work out. In my humble experience and observation, and two, it is not selfish to put yourself first. One of the things I bang on about, I say it over and over and over: you cannot give from an empty cup. Put your own oxygen mask on first, and it's just learning the beauty of the word no. I always remember when I first interviewed you, we had a really light-hearted interview, serious subject, light-hearted interview, my favourite of the lot. And as a DJ as well, by trade, I always try and assign a song to people that would fit them. And the one I said for you was Meghan Trainor and the song No. And it's worth YouTubing because it's a great song. It sounds like Destiny's Child, but my number is No. My name is No. And it's just basically saying
Was she Korean?
What? No.
I just thought that was her name.
But it really is. It really is the art of saying no.
It is. It is.
So let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Elizabeth Green, who's visiting from Manhattan, she's in London, so lock up your sons. Is this, say you've changed your mind, it's no, I've done that. How do you manage to get, it's so important, somebody says, could you do so and so? And you go, oh yeah. And then you get off the phone or whatever and you think, why the hell did I don't want to do that. I don't want to see them. I don't want to be there. This is pants. How do you do that without causing offense? Or, Helen, who cares? Just say, I'm not doing it. And if they kick off, tough on them.
Helen,
what's the way?
The forum is yours. Please teach us what you know.
Yes, precisely.
I mean, obviously, ideally, don't get into that position in the first place.
But we all do, Helen.
I know
this is the reality. The thing about Men's Radio and the Daily Show is that, unlike other shows, we try not to deal with seriously.
Yeah.
Deal with the theoretical, because it's always great. You know, you read these books, it's all great. And then real life comes and smacks you in the head and you've run out of toilet paper. You're dashing down to Tesco, the normal stuff that we do.
Yeah.
So we do say yes.
So
and then
it
we
is,
think, why?
we do. And it is okay to change your mind. I think, you know, we want to learn from that experience and not do it again, so that we don't become that, you know, that unreliable person that says yes to things and then changes their mind all the time.
See, that's awful.
Yeah,
that is really awful.
But you know, you are entitled to change your mind about something, and as you say, you can say that, you can say it in a nice way, and then again, it is about boundaries. It's about emotional boundaries. It's about letting that person have their disappointment or to feel annoyed with you, and to let them have that. And not take
and
it
why
on.
are we
really
so afraid?
So sorry, what a great phrase to let. I love that. It's an interesting
But
way of thinking.
why are we so scared to let people have their disappointment? Is it because we fear aggression or rejection, or?
It could be. In some cases, it's because we've taken on that responsibility. We think that we are responsible for how other people feel, or we're scared of rejection or their disapproval, or that they'll.
So let's break those two down, because they're both important ones. There we go. You've even got a quote with your name on it now, since which has come out on the show. Wow, powerful empty cup statement, most noteworthy, guys. Take note, Emma Webb. Yeah, Emma, if you spend any time with me, you'll hear me say that an awful lot. So let's break it down. People might fear rejection. Let's start with that one, because there's degrees of this, and there are some situations where you might have to be careful how you approach it, depending on the reaction of the other person. And I do want to touch on that. I know it's not pretty, but it's all about mental health. But let's just say rejection. We all want to be accepted, don't we? We all want to be part of the pack. You know, in olden times, if you were chucked out the tribe, you would die. It's almost like some of that is still left in us. So why are we so scared of a modern day no? What is it about the rejection thing?
I mean, our brains, you know, they haven't evolved that much, so there's still that primal element of, as you say, like, we want to be accepted by the tribe, we want to be part of the pack, we don't want to be exiled and left to fend for ourselves and fight off the tigers and the bears, and so it's like our brains.
I never really get behind, Helen, this whole we're still cavemen and cavewomen stuff. I really do think we've evolved.
I agree with Helen. I don't think our brains have evolved that much. I think the technology of the world has evolved an awful lot, but I think the way human beings think of wanting to be part of something and not exiled from the pack, it's an old unconscious fear. I really do believe that, and I really think that contributes to an awful lot of people pleasing. We literally fear exile. We fear the danger of not having the protection of the pack, which means essentially, if the pack's manipulative, it's got you by the kahunas, because it can make you do whatever you want, because if you don't do it, we'll chuck you out.
So I guess the trick is to be the most powerful person in the pack.
That's one way of doing it.
And well, that's my philosophy.
Okay, Simba.
For those
of us that aren't Simba, what do the rest of us do, Helen?
Let me read this out from Houston in Texas. If they're getting us on Deluxe Radio, I'm never quite sure these days. I surprised myself by saying an emphatic no recently. Not as surprised as the person I said no to. I blocked out the verbal abuse and walked away. You see, the telling thing, Helen, let me ask you this. The telling thing is if somebody says, hi, Neil, hi, could you do? And Neil says yes. And then he changes his mind. And I cut up really, really rough. I'm not talking about Neil and Russ' relationship, because we go back 35 years or something stupid. But when they cut up really rough and the mask drops, you think, this person was an absolute shit anyway. They were faking it. They needed a favor, or they needed something from me or from Neil or from you or from Julie Voice in Houston, Texas. You say no, and then you see the real person. And then you think, what the hell was I worried about? I don't need this person. I don't need this person in my life.
In this situation, fearing rejection, is it really just a question of becoming comfortable with people being pissed off with you?
That is a large part of it. Because one of the big issues that we have in setting boundaries or in saying no to people is being okay with that discomfort that we feel ourselves in saying no.
Yeah.
It's that anxiety.
Is it
around
aggressive?
what
Is
are
it
they
an
gonna
aggressive thing to say no?
No, it doesn't have to be.
But
No.
why has it been maneuvered? You see, this is the key. Why is it maneuvered? I asked Helen. She said no. What a cow. You know, it's suddenly you go from nice to horrid in like a drag
But I think that
race.
also depends on the person that you're talking to, because I
Mm.
used to know someone who would take even a casual disagreement, you know, I like baked beans, you don't, something as innocuous as that, as an actual personal attack, and then become aggressive to try and convince you of their point, you know.
Wow.
And eventually I just had to walk away. I literally said no and voted with my feet. So I did. And it made things a lot better. So it's so how did you first have the kahunas to start saying no and essentially take the risk of people's ire? Helen, did you start small? Did you start with the big stuff?
Great question, Neil.
Start small. Like start where it feels easiest. So for me, that was, and it doesn't make you laugh, it was actually going out shopping, and when the checkout assistant asked you for your email address so they can email you a receipt. And before, I always used to just give them my email address because I couldn't cope with that awkwardness of saying
wow.
no. I know, right?
Wow.
So for the first time, I was like, no, actually, no, just give me the paper receipt.
Yeah.
And that was where I started, like, so really small. And it's like, okay, I can do that. I've done that once. I can do it again. Now I can try something a bit bigger and go on from there.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
And it's a muscle, I suppose. It builds on itself, and the more you do it, the easier it gets, and the easier it gets, the more you do it.
Fascinating, though, isn't it? That, forgive me, because I don't know. I mean, you're Neil's chum, and I've only met you once on air, but that really is a reflection, clearly, of where you were. I'm guessing with your marriage and with your job, and you're thinking. I mean, to get to the level of like, here's a cashier. I don't know who the hell it is. I'm never going to see him again. What the hell difference? It makes no difference to them if I say yes or no. And to turn that into a triumph for yourself, which it was, is extraordinary, isn't it? But what a stage you must have been in. It
went from there to, I think, the next hurdle for me was sending back cold chips in a restaurant. Because again, and people, I know lots of people that do this. They get some food that isn't cooked right, or it's just the order's not right, and instead of sending it back, they're like, oh no, I don't want to make a fuss. Like I don't want to be too awkward about it.
Who's paying for it, Helen? Who's paying the bill? The waiter or you?
I know. And of course,
see, I never send food back in a restaurant.
Way.
I will never send food back in a restaurant. Not because of if they bring up the wrong order, obviously I will. I mean, it's completely wrong, but I won't, because I know they'll do something disgusting to it in the kitchen. No, I'm not joking. I'm serious. I'm absolutely serious. No, the chef or somebody, or the sous chef or somebody, I won't send it back. I just leave it.
Wow.
Just leave it. I won't send it
back. But now you can do the bigger no's now, can't you?
Indeed. Yeah. And
give us an example of a bigger one, because it's different for everyone. There's no right or wrong. But what was a really big one for you that when you walked away, you thought, actually, I really do got this?
Yeah. I mean, so recently I was asked to collaborate on a project with a fellow coach, and initially, I had all those old feelings, from my past come up in terms of, I don't want to let them down. I don't want to say no to them. But actually, I don't, this doesn't feel good to me. This doesn't quite seem right. And so, I kind of hummed and hawed, and I had to practice, how am I going to say no to this person and potentially let them down? But then I realized, actually, I'm making up a lot of this in my head. Like, they might just be absolutely fine with me saying no, like no problem. And in fact, of course, that's what happened when I went back and said, not on this occasion, but thank you for thinking of me. Absolutely fine.
Was it a slight side adjunct here? Was it your little voice saying, this doesn't sit comfortably with me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it wasn't like anything glaring. It's this little voice. And I think the more it's a real thing with me, the more we listen to our inner voice, I guess other people have different names for it, but that little voice, your gut feeling, call it what you will, the more you ignore it, the more trouble you get into.
Yeah.
And you always end up thinking, why didn't I knew this was wrong. I knew I should have stopped.
Because it's the conditioning. It's first is the voice that's conditioned, which says you should say yes, you should be a good boy or girl, you should do this, you should be giving of yourself to other people all the time. Should. But the irony is that when you actually do the judicious no's and put yourself first, and you don't try and give from an empty cup, ironically, you have an awful lot more to give, and an awful lot more to offer the world, which you are. At the moment, I'll put these up.
There's another point. There's another point as well. You guys are much younger than I am, and let's not get into it. It's just a fact of life, and I am very aware of the ticking clock. I'm losing friends. You don't know what's around the corner. All sorts of stuff, and I'm aware that I have a limited time, whatever that time may be. I'm not being dramatic. It's a fact of life. And I want to use that time as wisely as possible. One of the things I don't want to do is waste it on stuff that is I get nothing from. Emotionally, psychologically, financially. I'm like, what's the point? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? I've got X amount of time. I've got to maximize it. And you guys probably don't, I say that to the kids, and the kids look at me like I'm nuts, because for them, they're immortal. And I feel very mortal, very mortal. So I'm aware of it. Interesting. Elizabeth Green makes a point. Come and live in New York, part of life. Yeah, New Yorkers are notoriously rude, but I lived there and I loved it because there was no sham. It's the opposite to Los Angeles. There's no sham in New York. I want that. Boom, straight to the point. Los Angeles, everything's great, everything's marvelous, and they'll slit your throat.
Do you find your quality of life it's probably an obvious question, but no, let me rephrase that. How has your quality of life improved now that you are being true to yourself and making your own choices, even if they're not the choices that other people think you should make, Helen?
I find I have a lot more energy because I'm not wasting it just meeting other people's expectations or helping them fulfill their agendas.
Exactly.
So I'm also able to prioritize, like you were talking about the cup, like I'm able to prioritize filling up my cup. Yeah.
That is so
I just want to repeat that back because that was so important. You have so much more energy because you are not wasting it on trying to fulfill other people's agendas. Boom. Now, if that isn't self-care in a nutshell, and as I said, your cup is full and you have more energy. So my point is proven
where is it written? Where is it apart from if somebody's employing you, if they're paying you a salary, there is obviously a contractual, whether written, tacit, moral, whatever, legal. They're paying you a salary. There's a quid pro quo. They're paying you money, you perform a job, the end. We're not talking about that. To be clear, that's entirely different.
We're talking about very simple things.
But... Yeah, we're talking about stuff where people don't see they're crossing a boundary, but it's to help them. And you think, well, what am I getting out of this? And it's not about being greedy, and it's not always about money, but why should I do it? And maybe the key question is, do I actually want to do this? Or do I feel morally obliged? And then you look at the phrase morally obliged. You're not obliged at all.
No, there's nothing rude about saying no. There's nothing immoral about saying no. And all this comes from how we were brought up. Oh, you've got to say yes. But particularly with women, I thought, be a good little girl, be compliant, you do what people say. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. Yeah. It's a really bad meme. And I'm really glad that people like you are breaking it.
And I think it's really good to look at your motivation for doing things. Like you're saying, Russ, am I doing this because I want to do it? Or am I doing it out of a sense of obligation, or I'm going to feel guilty if I say no? And then looking at, actually, does that even make any sense? Or is that, is that coming from my past?
You see, the guilt thing is ferociously strong in so many people. And I put my hand up straight away. I beat myself up about it. I feel guilty. And I think, what am I feeling guilty about? Because someone is taking advantage, no matter what the situation, whatever the situation might be, they're actually taking advantage. And why should I play into that? When I say why should we, any of us, or as the French would say, why should we play into that game?
So
Why?
it takes some courage and it takes some strength, and if you need to, start small. But it can be done, Helen, clearly, because you are living proof of it.
Yeah.
Can you give us a few examples that you see, because you're a coach, so you must see an awful lot in your coaching practice. Russ,
I was going to ask a quick question, if I may, and then please answer Neil's points, because I'm finding this absolutely fascinating. I hope you are all around the world listening and watching to Men's Radio Station, The Daily Show with Russ Kane and Neil Long, with our special guest, Helen Snape. Now, coming at you live, direct, and uncensored, by the way. When you're, and again, please, it's not the BBC, it's not Newsnight. If you don't want to go there, don't. No problem whatsoever. Obviously, you had to extricate yourself from a marriage that wasn't working. We'll put it in neutral terms. Once you started that process, was it as don't go into the details, that's your private business, none of ours. Was it as difficult and as bad and as full of anguish as you thought it would be? Or once you started the process, actually, you thought, what the hell was I worried about?
Good question.
Please don't feel obligated, by the way.
I looking back, I think it was as hard as I thought it was going to be, because in a way, like my grief about leaving that relationship was quite complicated because it had been so bad for me. It becomes kind of complicated when you're leaving something and you're like, well, yeah, I really miss this person, but they were also really bad for me. So I had a lot of grief
like
to work
Stockholm syndrome kind of thing.
Kind of. But just because somebody's bad for you doesn't mean that you don't care for them or love them.
Boy, you see, that is so right.
Better the devil you know.
I can totally understand that, but think about, just unpack that for a second. How messed up is that? I mean, you're smart enough to know they're bad for you, and yet, maybe I should stay here. And you're thinking, and believe me, that no criticism whatsoever. I'm the last to criticize in anything like that. Trust me. We've all been there.
And also, like, we don't need to go into the details, but there's this thing which you would call a trauma bond. When you're in an abusive relationship, and it's very intense, and so breaking out of that, it's sort of,
I've heard the term trauma bonds recently, particularly people who've been in narcissistic relationships. But again, it is possible to break out, and you're living proof of that. Julie Voice.
And let me just ask this, and then we'll leave the subject alone, because I think I'm prying, and I don't want to do that, because you seem a very nice human being. Is this does the new relationship and the new you completely wash away the negative feelings and the guilt and all the rest of it that you had with your marriage? Or does it still linger?
I would say that all the therapy and self-help stuff that I've been doing has helped to undo all of that. It doesn't linger with me particularly. Occasionally, my ex appears in my dreams, which isn't nice, but there's not a lot I can do about that. But yeah, I do feel free of that relationship. I feel like I've done enough internal work to basically to say, I'm detached from that. I'm going to live my life. I'm going to get on with my life. And look after me.
And that's lovely, because you don't let it define you. Yes, it happened, but it doesn't define me. Yeah. You were. I love this phrase. You were fine, and then you were defined, and now you're becoming refined. Which I love that.
Is that
phrase.
you? Did you just come up with that?
No, I didn't. No.
You must have
I
the
didn't,
world's biggest
but
library.
I absolutely love that. And this is literally a process of finding, of refining yourself. Not that you were unrefined before, but you know what I mean. Refined, and really, it's the self-realization when you do this work, if that's the right word, that you were fine all along. And then when you realize you're fine all along, then you feel totally
Sounds like the
confident
Tate and Lyle of psychotherapy.
to walk your path in the world and do whatever it is you want to do when you realize that you're fine and enough and worthy to do it. And that's what the purpose of the therapy, I suppose. So can we get some examples, the ones you see most commonly, the ones that people wrestle with the most?
Oh, yes. So some of the ones that I come across a lot is like with parents. Things like parents showing up at their house like unannounced.
Yay.
Like for some people this is not an issue at all, but for some people this happens, and it's just about your personal space. And it's about having the conversation about, actually, you know, before you come to visit, I'd like you to call first.
But why? I'm your dad.
Still,
It's not unreasonable, but sometimes I pop in on my daughter. If I happen to be if I'm over in North London, which is a hell of a trek for me, if I'm there, I'll pop in, and I'll be honest with you, it's always lovely. You know, she's fantastic. End of. So we have a lovely relationship.
You have a great relationship. It's great.
She's fantastic, and you know.
But all the same, I wouldn't just show up at my daughter's place unannounced. I'd always ring.
Well, I wouldn't announce for if it was dinner time. I'll be honest. If it was like dinner time or something, I'm not going to just turn up. Although there'd be plenty for me.
So what if they what if they turn around and said, "But I'm your dad. I can turn up when I want to."
You can still say, you know, you can say, well, you know, yeah, I love you, Dad, but you need to call before you come round.
Simple as
and
that.
They'll say, but then they take it further and go, but why, Helen? After all I've done for you.
Yeah, what if the guilt card gets pulled after all I've done for you, and you can't even spare me 5 minutes for a cup of tea?
Brought you up for 30, 30, whatever it is when you went off, all I want is a lousy cup of tea. Fine. Then what?
That's just how it is. Because what we don't want to do.
That's not an answer, is
it? No, you're on something here, Helen. Carry on.
No, because we don't want to get drawn into
exactly
a long explanation. Because
so how do you corral that and
she just said keep it short, keep it sharp, and you don't feel you have to explain yourself. If I'm reading this right, the minute you go into a long explanation, it feels you have to explain yourself, which means your position is weaker. If you just keep it short and sharp, no, I'm sorry, I'd appreciate it if you called first.
Well, then you put the phone down. See, that always ends.
Then you change the conversation.
Anyway, when would you like to come, Dad?
Yeah.
Just want to make sure I'm in.
Yeah.
So there's one. But I love the way that that's a good one, Russ. I love the way you hit on that. Keep it short and keep it sharp. You start going into long-winded explanations, and that weakens your position straight away, doesn't it?
Well, it's about, as everything in life, when you find yourself on the back foot. When you find yourself on the back foot, it's like, oh, shit, now what am I going to do? And one of the great negotiating tactics that I learned years ago is to shut up, not fill the silence. Doesn't bother me at all.
That's nice.
Good time to read this out because we get some more examples in a minute. This is a free download on your website, Helen. The least we can do is give you a plug. Building Healthy Boundaries, an overgiver's guide on when to say yes and no in relationships. The link's up there and it's free. HelenSnape.com/free. And you've also got a self-study online course, Better Boundaries to Better Relationships. That's HelenSnape.com/better boundaries.
Terrific stuff.
It is, but as I say, but none of that would have come had you not been selfish, and I put that in big inverted commas, enough to put yourself first. Had you not filled your cup first, this important word would not be going out to the world. So was it selfish at all? Yeah. No, it wasn't. Give us some more examples, Helen. Some more examples.
Yes. So at work, you might find that you work when it's meant to be your downtime, like when you're meant to be taking a break. And this is a boundary, right? So unless we decide, actually, no, I am going to take a break, then we can end up overworking, not taking our break. And so we need to create the structure around that. And
You
say,
know the problem with that Helen Snape? I'll
What's
tell you what she is. She's not a team player. You're right. I asked her to do something. She said no, she was on a break. Well, Fred in accounts would do it. Well, let's give it to Fred. You know, I'm not sure about working with Helen. That's the
And you
reason.
would respond to that how?
Well,
I
you
would-
wouldn't know because she wouldn't be told. That's the
Oh,
problem. She wouldn't be
oh,
told.
well, there's not much
That's
you
the
can do if you
corporate
don't
world
know
for you,
about
fella.
something. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I think it might say something about the kind of work environment that you're working in.
My son,
Oh, yeah,
one
toxic,
of my
possibly.
twins, astounded me, and he's in a very pressure environment. I'm not going to say what he does, but it's high pressure and it's actually important work, a lot of which he can't discuss with me at all for security matters. And he set the boundaries, the Helen Snape boundaries, the moment he walked into the office.
Mm-hmm.
I leave at quitting time, to use the film Gone with the Wind, and quitting time was 5:30, and at 5:30 he leaves. And they said to him, well, aren't you taking the work computer? He says, no, I don't take the work computer home with me. The work computer stays on my work desk. I'm home. And all the other people did not establish those boundaries. He established it from day one.
Yeah, and who
No
does the better
problems
work?
whatsoever. They knew
And
not
who is
to
more
call him.
productive? And who's
They
more
knew
productive
not
at
to
work?
call, but Neil, they knew not to call him out of work hours. They
Yeah.
wouldn't contact him out of work hours, and he kept getting promoted.
Yeah.
Our
So
point
you gotta-
exactly.
But you've got to start off as you mean to go on.
Yeah,
That's the
because
problem.
he set the boundaries. He knew what his limits were. In honouring his limits and being true to himself, just to break this down, he would then turn in better work and therefore would get promoted.
Mm.
And what's selfish about that? Nothing. And
Whereas
it really
my
all makes sense.
my
doesn't
eldest
it?
son was working for a huge American company when he was living in England, and they'd start emailing him at 1:00 on a Sunday morning, and then phone him at 8:00 in the morning. So you didn't reply to the email, and he said, "Well, you're emailing me at 1:00 in the morning my time, and it's Sunday, you know, in the middle of the night." And they replied, "We're not interested in your time zone. You work to our hours, and here it's still work time." Well, he left the company. And got a much better job and emigrated. But I'm saying it really does go down, I think, to the atmosphere and the milieu and the culture. Thank you.
My cousin got a job, and they wanted him to do hours. He went, "No, I'm not doing those hours." He said, "I'll come in here and I'll go home then," and they were absolutely fine with it. So sometimes maybe it's not as big a risk as you think. Give us some more examples, Helen.
More examples. So another really common one that's problematic is people's use of social media and like being attached to their phone all the time.
Walking through London, what a nightmare it is now. God.
It puts some meat on the bone of that, if you would, Helen. Expound a bit more.
It becomes problematic. Like if you find that you're looking at your phone instead of focusing on the job that you're meant to be doing or the work that you're meant to be doing, or you find that, you know, hours have gone by and you've just like lost half the day. Or
well, it is a rabbit hole, isn't it?
It is.
Because sometimes it's just so blooming interesting and entertaining.
And they're designed to be addictive and to keep you on their platform for as long as possible. So but it can also be bad for your mental health, especially, you know, if you're perhaps taking in lots of like bad news stories or reading about people's problems a lot, and it's not helpful. So we can set boundaries around our use of social media. For example, you know, I don't have any alerts on my phone switched on, so that, you know, I choose when I go onto a social media platform. I don't have it like pinging me all the time. I track my social media usage. You know, you can set your phone to do that so that you can check that you're not using it for more hours than you wanted to.
And I think people also have very big expectations because something works in a way for them. They think it should be the same for everyone else. And if you say, actually, and I've had this before, I've said, actually, that's up to you and that's fine, but it's not for me. I'll do it this way. And people have got really angry as if I'm kind of as if it's, and this I can't quite understand because it's over something so innocuous, as if it's some sort of personal attack, and it kind of triggers them into arguments or mean mode.
Could you put a bit of meat on the bone on that? I'm not
And then they
entirely
cut up
sure.
rough. Well, for example, I sometimes work, and I know it sounds strange, I'll put some music on, and I might even go out to my room and lay on my bed on the computer, and I'm focused, and I can do that really well. And then someone I was in the house with, this would in the past, will come in, disturb me for a start. How can you possibly work like that? You should be working like this. Your posture's terrible. You should be, and should.
Sod
and I'm
off.
like,
Sod off.
yeah, well, that is essentially what I said. But they can't seem to understand that because something won't work for you, I'm not trying to force them to lay on their bed and work. I'm not forcing my will on them. Could you please offer me the same respect? And if I say it works for me, my daughter.
But it's none of their business.
My daughter is an incredibly intelligent young woman, and she works best. Over lockdown, I was broadcasting all the virtual parties. It was power ballads night, and she's writing her thesis. And she found that power ballads, a bit of
power ballads.
and I'm, Alone from Heart and, Def Leppard was really, really, and Bon Jovi was really good, conducive to writing a thesis. Now, people might say, how can you possibly work with that music in the background? Because it worked for her. And that's enough.
But you can't be dictatorial about that. When I'm writing and working or emailing stuff, I have to have, I work in total silence. I won't have any. People say, do you have the music on to keep you company? No, because my head is my own.
Right. So if I turn around to you and say, well, how can you possibly work that way, Russ? And then got angry with you. How can you possibly work that way? Everyone knows you can only work with music. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And, well, of course it's ridiculous, but I don't understand why people have the time or the bandwidth in their life to get involved in something which is none of their business.
Details of other people's
none
lives.
of their business.
Rather than dealing with what they should be dealing with, which is themselves. And then when you do that, you can come on shows like this with amazing things on offer for people, which they can get for free today. And because you've done the work on yourself. Give us some more examples, Helen.
More examples. So
I know you love doing this. Come on, give us more examples.
I know. So another one is like with the friend who just keeps giving you advice and you're just fed up of it. Like every time I talk, she just wants to tell me what to do. And
but can I just preface that? Have you asked let's call the friend, doesn't matter. Have you asked the friend for advice, or they're just saying, they're just out of the blue, they're just giving you advice?
They're just giving advice. So you're maybe telling them about a problem or, how you're feeling about something. And they're like, well, you should do this.
Well, that's not terrible though. Because you've opened the door, you're telling them about a problem.
Yeah. So in terms of setting a boundary about that, like one thing is, for a start, be careful maybe what you share with them. Because as you say, you're opening a door, right? Like if you start telling them about a problem, you are opening a door for them to start talking about it. But also you can also set the boundary in terms of like what you want from them. So you can say, look, like I'm going to tell you about this problem I'm having. I would just love for you to listen. I don't need any advice.
Why would you do that?
Because
why do you need to air a problem, share it with somebody, and yet request that they don't? You can do what the hell you want. It's your life. I'm not being prescriptive about it. I'm just curious. I'm curious.
It may be somewhat unorthodox, but maybe that's the problem, that it is unorthodox.
Well, no,
because you're making your intentions and boundaries very clear. What's wrong with that?
But you've got a problem. You've now said, I'm going to share this problem with you. You tell them the problem, and they sit on their hands and go, okay. Well, I don't understand. Is it just airing the problem?
Sometimes it feels good just to be heard and validated.
It does. Yeah, it does. So
what I found is, particularly if I'm not sort of separating genders here, but generally more with women prefer to be just listened to and validated rather than fixed. Yeah, I had it with my daughter the other day. She just wanted to chat. She was having a rant about something at work, and she said, "Just give me 5 minutes." I'd have given her longer, and she just chat for 5 minutes, and then she's much better. But if I'd have gone in, well, what I would have done, here's what you should have done. If that had been me, I would have done this. Then all that's going to communicate to her is, I don't hear you, and I'm not listening.
Yeah, I ease in by saying, well, would you? I actually, unless it's somebody who's very, very close with me, and I just barge in because that's how we are with each other. We go back forever, or we're seriously close friends. Or I'd say, well, would you like to know what I'd do? And they can say, no, I couldn't give a monkey's what you'll do. Your life's a train wreck. Or they could say, yeah.
And what I
I'm
might
quite
say
interested.
is something like, do you know, I had a similar experience. Here's what worked for me, but it's put on the table in a very kind of for what it's worth basis. And there's no hard feelings if you pick it up and take it, or if you don't take it.
Yeah.
So they don't feel.
No, Elizabeth, we're not. No. Sorry, Elizabeth. I think you're wrong. Elizabeth's saying we shoulda, woulda, coulda.
No, we're not.
Phrase. No, we're not. No, I think we're saying the opposite.
I think we're saying the opposite.
Yeah, we're not saying that.
We got 10 minutes. More examples, please.
But there's no. But Elizabeth's point is there's nothing worse than you've got something, and a situation's arisen, and some genius says, "Well, what I would have done is you should have done." It's like, well, that's not helpful.
I once had someone say to me, "Well, I told you that 25 years ago. If you'd have taken my advice back then, when I was in a situation," I'm like, that is really not helpful. But the point is, people like that, it's all about their ego and their need to be right rather than a desire to help you. Right?
It's not, you got to think before you open your gob, you got to think, is this actually constructive?
Yes.
If somebody's got a problem, is this constructive?
Exactly.
Or are you just filling dead air?
God gave you one of these and two of these for a reason. That's annoying when people say that.
But it's like, is this helpful? Or is it constructive? Or shall I just shut the hell up?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Is it helpful? Is it constructive? And is it wanted? Like,
yeah. Is it wanted?
Because sometimes, we can give somebody like the best advice, but if they don't want it, they're not going to be listening to you anyway.
Exactly.
You've done your, but
my girl the other day, all
best.
she wanted was her dad to listen to her for a few minutes, and it's hardly too much to ask. I'd listen to her all day, but all she wanted was a few minutes, then to have a gin and tonic, and it's so much easier than me trying to fix it.
Great.
And yes, we did hit the gin, which was nice. More examples, Helen. We've got 8 minutes. Give us some more.
So another one, a work one, is having to deal with colleagues that maybe they like to gossip.
Waterfall of gossip.
You don't, and you just don't want to. You don't want to go there. Like it's just it's a negative drain. Like it's horrible.
But it can be pretty good sometimes. Come on,
Russ.
It can. Come on. You want to know who's shagging who? It's brilliant. It fills up. It's entertaining.
Well, there was that instant where it was caught on camera at the staff party where we used to work, but I glossed over that. Anyway, so
yeah, but you can set a boundary around that as well. By just, like not participating in the gossip yourself.
Yeah.
Neil, the bulk eraser. Watch Neil's face, Helen. Neil, the bulk eraser.
Back to you, Helen.
Moving on.
You were saying, Helen.
Yeah, no. So you because boundaries about you taking care of you. You can like just not participate in the gossip, and then like if somebody says to you, if they start talking to you about something, you can say, look, like I'm not interested in talking about other people's personal stuff.
That's absolutely right.
Sometimes people are quite affronted by that. If you say I don't want to gossip, they're like, what? You mean you don't want to hear my gem that I've been carefully nursing all day to share with everyone? I've been looking forward to this all day, my little gossip. And you kind of spoil the party almost, don't you?
Yeah, Helen's right. You can just say, none of my business. Don't want to know.
Just say no.
And I say that. I say that a lot. People say, you know about it? Hey. I've got a situation where somebody I know quite well, kind of a mate, and he's going messy divorce and everything. And other people are coming up, and I'm going, this is a live action thing now, right? Somewhere that I go a lot, and I'm going, hey, it's none of my business. I'm not getting involved. There's two sides to every story. Nothing to do with me. And I say that because I shut it down. I don't want to do that.
There was a couple I knew, and I knew them both as friends. And then, of course, they go through a messy split up, and they're both saying things to me about the other one. And I just said to them, look, I know you both as friends, and therefore I'm not going to gossip. And that just keeps you out of that negative drain, and it also maintains your integrity as well. Yeah. And to feel your integrity with yourself, that is a really precious gift in the world that tries to take it away every
because
turn.
Damn well, if you've ever been through friends getting a divorce, they're going to go, well, Neil thinks that, and then the other person goes, well, I don't.
And it's a shit show.
What Neil thinks.
Don't get involved.
How dare he? And then boom, now Neil's not friends with anybody, and all ends up horrible.
When it was never nothing to do with me in the first place. Helen, can we get a couple more?
Yeah. So another common one I come across is dealing with perhaps in-laws that don't approve of your parenting style.
Oh, how do you deal with that?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? It's a tricky one, especially if it's in-laws. So for a start, I'd say that that ideally it will be your partner that talks to their family about it, because I think we should deal with our own family. However, if they haven't established a real adult to adult relationship with their parents, you might have to set the boundary.
And how would you negotiate that very awkward situation?
Yeah, it is awkward, isn't it? So but it could be like saying, I really appreciate that you take an interest and you care about our family, but we need to navigate how we parent on our own.
Yeah.
Why don't you want my experience? You don't know what you're doing, Helen. I wouldn't have done that. Do you know how I navigated it? I outlived them all. All of them. They're all rotting somewhere. It's very difficult because if your partner is very, very close with their parents and the parents come in, it's, and then it's usually them. I'm sorry to say this, it sounds sexist. It's not. It's usually the mum who's, the dad's just happy to be there and have a drink or whatever and play for 5 minutes. But it's usually the mum who has these opinions, isn't it? It's quite tricky. It can cause huge problems. Huge.
Yeah.
But again, the conversations that need to be had. I do want to touch on this before we run out of time. Back to what we were talking about originally, just saying no to people and the potential of rejection. Now, if they're particularly narcissistic, some people on that spectrum could get violent. It could end up in a sort of domestic violence situation. That's a very difficult one. And I'm certainly, there are ways of possibly dealing with that. I'm sure there's resources online you can go to, very clever websites that have got a leave this website button. So if you're looking at something, you can just press that and it'll go, get off the website, that sort of thing. But if you are being threatened, it's obviously goes without saying, seek help before you start doing the more subtle bits of people.
Yeah. You have to prioritize your safety, right?
Of course.
So if you're with somebody who, if you start setting a boundary, they're gonna fly into an absolute rage or get violent or something, then you're right. You need to prioritize your safety first.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How awful.
Couple of resources. Russ,
Awful.
sorry?
I'm saying that's just so awful and horrible. It's so.
We could talk all day, but I do want to give these a couple of plugs just because you've been good enough to give up your time, and I really hope you get
thank
some
you,
traffic
Alan.
from
You've been
this.
great again, by the way.
A couple of resources which has come from, and what I love about you is that you walk your talk and it's come from real experience.
Yeah.
You haven't gone and got the qualification, worn the white coat, and never experienced it in real life. This is
like
really
a politician, you mean?
in the crucible of your own experience. So a free download on your website, Building Healthy Boundaries, an overgiver's guide on when to say yes and when to say no in relationships. HelenSnape.com/free. And if you want to take it a little bit further, it's a self-study online course, Better Boundaries for Better Relationships. And that's HelenSnape.com/better boundaries. And if you want to reach out to Helen, you can on HelenSnape.com, because you cover the whole gamut of relationships. You do sexual relationships as well, don't you? Or is that something?
Yeah, like intimate relationships, family relationships, relationships at work, everything to do with relationships and boundaries and confidence.
Why is it so important to have boundaries, Helen? Why is it so important to have boundaries?
Oh, snapshot answer. It's because it's self-care in action. Yeah.
And also, Helen, if you could train a mini schnauzer not to take up the entirety of a king-size bed so that you are scrunched into the corner every bloody night, I think, mini schnauzers need their own boundaries as well. Just putting it out there. Just say. You've been a fantastic guest, Helen. You were brilliant last time. So much good stuff. And as Neil, as ever, puts his finger on the pulse in his special longy way, was this: you have walked that road yourself in your own shoes, and that makes it so much more powerful than just being theoretical.
We'll leave you with a couple of Helen Snape quotes. Be willing to let people have their disappointment.
Yep.
There's one, and I love this one because it just shows that it's not selfish to do this. That if you do this, you have more to give to everyone, including yourself. Yourself first, I might add. I have so much more energy now. I'm not constantly fulfilling other people's agendas. HelenSnape.com if you want to reach out to Helen. Free download, HelenSnape.com/free, or a self-study online course, Better Boundaries to Better Relationships, HelenSnape.com/.
And that, gang, all over the world, is it for this edition of The Daily
Helen,
Show.
you are awesome. I love you.
Thank you for having me.
I like you in a collegial way. Bye, Helen. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody. Take care. See you Friday.